The air around you feels still, as if the world itself is holding its breath for your next step. Within that quiet space, there is a stirring, a whisper from deep inside, reminding you that there is a higher place to reach. Have you ever felt that within your soul there is a mountain you must climb to touch the light? That sense that something greater is calling you, not from outside, but from the center of your being. This is where our journey begins, not with striving for distant heavens, but with an ascent that begins in the mind, courses through the heart, and transforms your entire being. As Joseph Murphy once taught, your subconscious mind is the seat of your emotions and the storehouse of your memory. It is the creative medium through which your beliefs are manifested. In other words, every step you take inward is not a retreat from life, but a reorientation toward power. That mountain you sense is not a burden, but an invitation, a spiritual law embedded in your very nature. It is here, in Psalm 24, that we find a roadmap that is both ancient and timeless, calling the seeker to rise above confusion, fear, and limitation into a state of divine clarity. Psalm 24 begins with majesty. The earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof, the world, and they that dwell therein. In a few simple words, it reminds us that everything we touch, every breath we take, belongs to a divine order that has always been present. This is not mere poetry. It is a declaration that the very ground you walk upon, the body you inhabit, and the mind you carry are all part of a greater reality. You are not adrift. You are woven into an intelligent design. From this place of security, the psalm poses its great question: who may ascend the hill of the Lord, and who may stand in his holy place? It is not a question designed to shame or exclude, but to awaken. The mountain represents your higher consciousness, that place within where peace and power converge. To ascend it requires preparation, a purification of thought, a realignment of motives, and a surrender of all that weighs you down. The psalm answers its own question: he that hath clean hands and a pure heart. This is not about outward appearances. This is a call to integrity, to a harmony between what you think, feel, and do. Clean hands symbolize right action choices that align with your soul. A pure heart speaks to your motives, the deep currents of desire that shape your life. As you listen, you may feel the tension between your current reality and the vision of that holy ascent. This is not a condemnation, but an awakening. Every step you have taken so far has brought you here, and every step forward begins now with clarity and honesty. The mountain of the Lord is not a far-off peak. It is an inner state of being, and its ascent is open to anyone willing to do the deep work of transformation. Joseph Murphy spent his life teaching that the subconscious mind is not merely a repository of memories, but a fertile ground where belief becomes reality. He would often say that what you impress upon the subconscious with feeling and conviction is what you will experience outwardly. This means that inner ascension is not mystical in the sense of being inaccessible. It is mystical because it is hidden in plain sight, governed by laws that are as consistent as gravity. When you shift your inner life, your thoughts, your expectations, your faith, you are already climbing the mountain. Consider for a moment the wisdom of Psalm 24 through Murphy's lens. Clean hands are symbolic of your conscious choices. They represent the actions you take deliberately. A pure heart reflects the deeper beliefs you have accepted, whether they are life-giving or limiting. To ascend is to purify both action and belief until they are in harmony. This process is not instant. It requires discipline, reflection, and an honest assessment of what you truly desire. Are your goals aligned with divine truth, or are they shaped by fear and insecurity? Are your actions reflective of love, or do they echo old habits of self-protection and doubt? The psalm invites you to look at these questions without fear, for its message is not condemnation, but liberation. There is a higher path, and it is already within you. Murphy's philosophy brings this truth into practical terms. He often taught that affirmations, visualizations, and prayer were not mere rituals but methods for impressing new ideas upon the subconscious. When you repeat a truth with conviction, "I am guided by divine wisdom," for example, you are planting seeds that will reshape your reality. This aligns perfectly with the Psalm's call for purity. A pure heart is not merely free from malice, it is filled with truth. A mind filled with truth naturally produces clean hands, actions that uplift rather than harm, create rather than destroy. The spiritual journey described in Psalm 24 is not for an elite few, it is the birthright of every soul. The mountain is steep, but every step upward strengthens you. And unlike physical mountains, this ascent is not measured in distance, but in awareness. The higher you climb in consciousness, the clearer life becomes. You begin to see beyond appearances. Problems no longer feel like immovable obstacles. They become lessons, invitations to grow. Imagine standing at the foot of that inner mountain, looking upward. The air is thin, the path narrow, but your spirit is strong. Every step forward is a choice, to release resentment, to forgive yourself, to let go of fear, to embrace faith. These choices are the tools that carry you higher. And as you ascend, you begin to feel lighter, freer, more grounded in your connection with the divine. Psalm 24 closes with a triumphal vision. "Lift up your heads, O ye gates, and be ye lifted up, ye everlasting doors, and the King of glory shall come in." This is not about a distant deity entering a temple of stone. It is about awakening divine power within your own consciousness. You are the gate. Your mind is the door. As you lift your thoughts, as you open yourself to truth, the presence of God, limitless wisdom, peace, and strength floods in. Our journey in this audiobook will guide you step by step through this process. We will explore purification, faith, humility, meditation, and the power of divine presence. But it all begins here with an acknowledgement. You are standing at the threshold of something extraordinary. The holy mountain is calling, not to shame you, but to remind you of who you truly are. This is your invitation to rise. The Psalm's opening verses are more than ancient poetry. They are a declaration of spiritual reality. The earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof, the world, and they that dwell therein. These words announce a foundation of order, reminding us that life is not chaos, though it may feel that way at times. Existence is held by a greater intelligence, and this recognition forms the ground from which every spiritual ascent begins. Without this grounding truth, the climb feels impossible. With it, even the steepest path becomes a training ground for courage and faith. When the psalmist asks, "Who may ascend the hill of the Lord? Who may stand in his holy place?" the question strikes something deep. It feels less like a distant theological inquiry and more like a challenge whispered into your spirit. Who indeed will rise? The answer is both simple and severe. He who has clean hands and a pure heart. This imagery is not concerned with ceremonial perfection. It is about the alignment of your inner life with the eternal. Clean hands represent action flowing from integrity. A pure heart points to motive refined by truth. Together they form a mirror of the soul, revealing what is truly carried within. This vision of ascent is not meant to intimidate. It calls forth potential. Each word of Psalm 24 stands like a marker on a trail, inviting every seeker to rise above fear and confusion. To have clean hands is to live with conscious responsibility. Every choice is a step on the mountain path, shaping the landscape of the inner world. A pure heart is not an unattainable ideal, but a state of clarity that emerges when old resentments, hidden doubts, and destructive beliefs are released. This is not a moralistic standard to fear. It is a spiritual blueprint for liberation. Joseph Murphy's philosophy echoes this truth. He taught that the subconscious mind is like rich soil, accepting every seed of thought planted within it. Actions, words, and habits are not random. They are fruit grown from that soil. If the soil is filled with fear or bitterness, the harvest will reflect it. If it is cultivated with faith, harmony, and love, life itself becomes a testament to divine law. The Psalm's call for purity is therefore deeply practical. It is a reminder that transformation begins in thought, not circumstance. Think of the mountain again, but not as a daunting cliff or some mystical peak reserved for a chosen few. It is the structure of your own consciousness. The lower slopes are crowded with noise, memories of failure, voices of criticism, and the heavy fog of self-doubt. Yet with each conscious step upward, each act of forgiveness, each decision to trust the inner wisdom of God, the air becomes clearer. You begin to see the pattern. Life is not happening to you. It is responding to what you hold within. You are invited to see yourself as a gate. The Psalm's later verses speak of gates lifting their heads and everlasting doors opening. These gates are not ancient city walls. They are symbols of consciousness. When the mind is closed, no light enters, no transformation occurs. But when the mind lifts, when it opens to the divine presence, everything shifts. Spiritual ascension is not escape, it is awakening. The King of Glory, as the psalm names it, represents the presence of God, the higher intelligence that moves through all things. The mountain is not climbed through physical exertion, but through surrender and alignment. The message of Psalm 24 and Murphy's teachings converge here. Purity is not about suppression, it is about clarity. This clarity is cultivated through meditation, prayer, and disciplined thought. Murphy often emphasized the law of belief. What you believe with feeling becomes your reality. To purify the heart is to examine those deep beliefs that silently govern life, replacing fear-driven narratives with truths grounded in divine wisdom. There is a reason this passage has endured for centuries. Its challenge resonates because every soul instinctively knows it was meant for more than survival. The inner mountain is not an illusion, it is a call to remember who you are. And the purity it demands is not perfectionism, but integrity, a union of thought, word, and action that reflects divine order. Pause for a moment and consider this. Every thought you allow to take root is a step on this mountain path. There is no neutral ground. When you choose love over bitterness, you ascend. When you choose clarity over confusion, you ascend. Each decision strengthens the spirit, reshaping not only your perception, but the reality that unfolds around you. This is why the psalmist's words are both challenge and invitation. The path is narrow because it requires intention, yet it is open to all who are willing to climb. In this light, Murphy's methods become tools for the journey. His approach to prayer as scientific was not meant to strip it of reverence, but to remind us that spiritual laws are reliable. Just as gravity does not fail, so too the law of belief and expectation never falters. What you deeply accept within, the subconscious expresses outwardly. Purifying the heart is therefore not merely about morality, but about precision, removing the inner clutter that blocks divine flow. This understanding transforms how the psalm is read. It is not only a poem, It is a coded guide for spiritual mastery. The imagery of clean hands and a pure heart is an invitation to examine the energy behind every word spoken, every decision made. As Murphy would often say, the subconscious accepts impressions without judgment. That means every self-criticism, every fearful projection is quietly shaping tomorrow. Spiritual ascent begins when you decide to impress truth instead. Think of a climber scaling a mountain. Each foothold must be chosen carefully. Each movement is deliberate. The same is true of the mind. Every affirmation of truth is a foothold, every prayer a step upward, every moment of stillness a pause to regain strength. Over time, the climb reshapes you. Old fears lose their grip, clarity sharpens, and the summit feels closer. Psalm 24 is a mirror, showing what is possible when life is lived from a place of reverence and inner strength. Its language is ancient, but its message is urgent. Open the gates of your mind, lift your inner vision, and let the King of Glory enter. This is not an abstract idea, it is a spiritual law. Divine power flows wherever it is welcomed. The climb is not meant to exhaust you, but to reveal the strength that has been within all along. As this audiobook unfolds, each section will take us further into this journey, not as detached observers, but as participants. The ascent is not theoretical, it is deeply personal. This is why the psalm begins by anchoring us in the truth that all creation belongs to God. From this foundation, fear loses its authority. You stand on holy ground already. The climb is simply the realization of that fact. The question remains echoing through centuries: who will ascend? The answer is not found in external validation or ritual, but in the willingness to purify thought and act with integrity. The mountain is before you, and the gates are within you. Every choice you make opens or closes them. With each conscious breath, the climb continues. The language of Psalm 24 is rich with imagery, and none is more powerful than the declaration that only those with clean hands and a pure heart may ascend the holy hill. These words are simple, yet their depth invites contemplation. Clean hands symbolize more than physical cleanliness. They represent integrity in action. What we do with our hands, how we create, serve, and touch the world, is a reflection of the inner life. A pure heart, in turn, points to motives untainted by fear, resentment, or deception. Together they form a picture of harmony between thought, feeling, and deed. This is not an impossible standard set to discourage seekers. It is an invitation to authenticity, to living from a place of alignment where the outer life reflects the truth within. When these words were first written, they would have spoken to a culture deeply familiar with ritual purification, yet the psalm carries a timeless wisdom that transcends ceremony. The purity it calls for is not a matter of external rites, but of inner reality. To ascend spiritually is to enter into a state where motives are clear, where every action is born from a higher awareness rather than ego-driven impulse. The climb toward that holy place is not a punishment, it is a liberation. It frees the soul from the weight of falsehood, guilt, and fear, making it light enough to rise. Joseph Murphy's teachings bring this symbolism into sharp focus for the modern seeker. He emphasized that the subconscious mind accepts every idea impressed upon it and brings it to life in our experiences. Purity, then, is not only about moral goodness, but also about mental precision, choosing thoughts that align with truth and rejecting those that distort reality. To have a pure heart is to be inwardly undivided, to hold a steady faith in divine order despite outward appearances. Murphy often reminded his readers that a divided mind cannot create harmony. The inner world must be unified in vision and belief if one is to experience lasting peace. The call to have clean hands and a pure heart is deeply practical. Consider how often our actions are driven by subconscious fear or guilt rather than conscious choice. Many live their lives reacting rather than creating, pulled by old patterns that feel like fate. The psalm invites us to step out of this cycle by examining the energy behind every decision. To act with clean hands is to bring awareness to behavior, ensuring that each action reflects integrity. It is not about perfection, it is about mindfulness, about refusing to let unconscious patterns dictate destiny. Murphy's methods, affirmation, visualization, and prayer become tools for achieving this purity. He taught that the subconscious mind is like a fertile garden. Whatever seeds are planted will grow, whether they are seeds of fear or faith. Purity of heart is therefore the intentional planting of truth-filled ideas, nurturing them with repetition and feeling until they become second nature. This is not a mystical abstraction, but a process of reprogramming thought patterns to align with spiritual principles. Imagine for a moment the act of cleansing the heart as one would cleanse a room filled with dust and clutter. At first, it feels overwhelming. Old resentments rise to the surface, doubts make themselves known, and memories of past mistakes seem impossible to release. Yet with each conscious act of forgiveness, with each declaration of divine order, the clutter begins to clear. Light enters the space, and a sense of freedom replaces heaviness. The clean heart is not merely innocent, it is strong, forged in the fire of honesty and courage. Psalm 24's imagery of ascent ties directly into this process. The climb requires shedding what weighs us down. Unforgiveness, bitterness, and shame are burdens that cannot be carried to higher consciousness. The path is narrow because these attachments cannot fit through its gates. Yet this narrowing is a gift. It focuses us, simplifying life until only truth remains. Spiritual ascent is not about accumulating more knowledge or titles, it is about releasing illusions. Murphy's perspective reinforces this. He believed that the divine mind operates through laws as exact as those governing nature. Just as gravity pulls all things toward the earth, faith draws divine order into experience. To have clean hands and a pure heart is to live in harmony with these laws, becoming a conscious co-creator with God rather than a passive observer of life. It is the realization that the universe is not random, it is responsive, always mirroring what is held within. This understanding transforms how spiritual growth is viewed. Instead of striving for purity through willpower or asceticism, the seeker begins to see purification as a natural result of alignment. When you choose thoughts of peace, gratitude, and trust, your heart becomes clear because you are resonating with truth. When your motives shift from self-protection to service, your hands become clean because they act from love rather than fear. The process is organic, not forced. The psalmist's vision also reminds us that spiritual ascent is not solitary. While the work is deeply personal, its effects ripple outward. A pure heart radiates calm and compassion, influencing relationships and environments. Clean hands build rather than destroy, bringing order to chaos. The climb may be inward, but its impact is universal. This is why ancient scripture and modern metaphysics agree. Transformation within inevitably transforms the outer world. The mountain metaphor is a powerful teacher. At its base, the air is dense, and the noise of daily life surrounds you. As you climb, the atmosphere thins, and the distractions of the world fade. The higher you go, the more you must rely on inner strength and focus. Each step demands intention, yet each step also rewards with clarity and perspective. This is the journey of purification, a gradual rising into greater awareness. For Murphy, prayer was a central tool in this ascent. He described prayer not as pleading with an external deity, but as aligning thought with divine law. When you affirm truth and see yourself as already connected to God's wisdom, you are praying in the highest sense. This type of prayer purifies because it replaces fear with faith, aligning the conscious and subconscious minds in harmony. Over time, this alignment becomes visible in every area of life, proving that spiritual growth is not an abstract concept, but a practical reality. The Psalms' message is as relevant now as it was thousands of years ago. In a world filled with distraction and division, the call to ascend is urgent. Clean hands and a pure heart are not signs of religious superiority. They are symbols of integration. They represent a mind that is not at war with itself, a soul at peace with its Creator, and a life that reflects divine order. The mountain is not climbed by force, but by surrender. Surrender to truth, to love, to the unchanging presence of God. This section of our journey is an invitation to examine the hidden beliefs that shape your reality. The gates of your mind are waiting to be lifted, each thought purified by truth. Each action guided by love is a key turning in the lock. The holy hill is not a distant realm. It is the summit of your own consciousness, waiting to be claimed step by step. What if the inner climb obeys laws as steady as sunrise? Not random favors, not shifting moods, but principles, subtle yet exact, by which thought becomes circumstance and devotion becomes power. When Psalm 24 speaks of ascending the holy hill, it points to this dependable order. Elevation is not granted capriciously. It unfolds where the inner and outer agree, where heart and hand stand in truth. The ancient question, who may ascend, meets a modern reply. The mind, rightly directed, is a temple and a workshop, and its offerings shape the path beneath our feet. Teachers of the inner life have long insisted that the unseen side of the mind, the quiet, receptive depth, is creative. It receives impressions, nourishes them, and projects them outward as experience. Like soil, it does not argue with the seed. It magnifies whatever is planted with conviction. If fear is sown, fear finds a harvest. If faith is sown, life answers in kind. This is not superstition. It is spiritual causation. What is impressed is expressed. When Psalm 24 asks for clean hands and a pure heart, it names both sides of the process, action and motive, deed and belief, calling them to harmony. A pure heart does not mean a sterile heart. It means an undivided one. When motive is clear, when desire is aligned with truth rather than anxiety, the inner life stops contradicting itself. The result is quiet power. Clean hands follow naturally because action ceases to fight belief. This is why the ascent is described as holy ground. It is not a place of strain, but of coherence. The person who climbs with divided motives stumbles. The one who climbs with unitary purpose finds footing where others see only rock. There is a practical art to this. Thought does not change reality simply by passing through the mind. It changes reality when the deeper mind consents. Consent forms where attention, emotion, and repetition converge. We return to an idea, we feel its truth, and the inner life receives it as a pattern. From there, conduct changes almost without effort. The Psalms standard becomes livable, not by gritted teeth, but by interior consent. The conscience lightens, the will steadies, and choices begin to echo a higher rhythm. Prayer under this lens is alignment. Not pleading for exceptions, but consenting to the order that already is. When prayer is practiced as inner agreement with divine law, it loses the tone of desperation and takes on the quiet cadence of certainty. Gratitude becomes the atmosphere of thought because we are aligning with what is ultimately real rather than arguing with appearances. This is one reason short, respectful phrases from Scripture carry such force, not because words themselves are magic, but because they point the mind toward the state where truth is received. The gate lifts, the light enters. If the deeper mind is creative, then purity is precision. To purify is to remove mixed signals resentment coupled with affirmations of love, despair coupled with declarations of trust. The mountain is steep wherever the signal is mixed because each step cancels the last. Purity simplifies, one intention honestly held, one devotion carried into action. In this way, the Psalm's imagery ceases to feel austere and begins to feel like mercy. The narrow path is not cruel, it is clear. Consider how this plays out in an ordinary day. A quiet decision is made. Today, truth governs speech. That decision is impressed upon the inner life not only by saying it, but by feeling its value, picturing its fruit, returning to it when the mind wanders. The first conversation of the morning brings a chance to keep faith with the decision. Each kept promise deepens the impression. Each lapse, if met with honest correction rather than shame, still strengthens the pattern because integrity has reclaimed authorship. Over time, the deeper mind recognizes the new instruction and takes it as normal. Speech shifts, relationships change, doors open. Not luck law. This is why the Psalms climb is best understood as a sequence of inner permissions. We permit the heart to release old grievances, and suddenly the air at our altitude clears. We permit the mind to rest in trust rather than anxiety, and strength gathers without fanfare. We permit the body to act in accordance with conscience, and complexity recedes. None of this asks for denial of pain. It asks for mastery of meaning. What story will govern this moment? What truth will receive our consent? At particular points in the ascent, a firm activation helps. Right now, allow one clear truth to settle. The reality you seek cannot be carried to you if the gates remain closed. Lift them. Lift them by honoring what you already know to be right. Lift them by offering to the deeper mind an impression of wholeness rather than fracture. I am aligned with the good. I act from the good. The good receives me. Let this be felt, not merely said. Feeling is the ink that writes on the inner tablet. A common objection arises: if law governs, where is grace? Grace is the warmth of the sun that makes the seed live. Law is the rhythm by which the seed becomes a tree. One without the other leaves the field barren or chaotic. Grace invites, law fulfills. When the psalm calls for purity and clean action, it is grace pointing out the conditions under which our lives can carry more light. The invitation is universal, but the consent is personal. No one can ascend for us. No one can deny us either. In the hush that follows such realizations, something practical becomes visible. Discipline is devotion in motion. Set times of prayer, moments of silence, conscious words before sleep. These are not chores, but channels. They give the deeper mind a steady stream of impressions to magnify. Morning by morning, evening by evening, the pattern strengthens. Over seasons, character crystallizes. The path that once felt abstract underfoot becomes solid rock. there is a final implication that reaches into the psalm's triumphant close. When the gates lift and the presence enters, the ascent is no longer just personal development. It becomes participation in a larger life. Strength serves, wisdom guides, peace stabilizes. The hill is holy not because it flatters the climber, but because it opens a view. The world belongs to the one who ordered it, and every soul is invited into that order. Clean hands become hands that build, a pure heart becomes a heart that blesses. This is the fruit of inner law lived as love. The mountain stands, and the path is before us. The laws are steady, the grace is generous, and the invitation is alive. Consent within, act without, keep the signal clear. As purity gathers and action aligns, the climb becomes inevitable. The gates rise almost of their own accord, and what the psalm names as glory meets us, not as spectacle, but as quiet, unwavering power. Every spiritual ascent begins with a quiet clearing. Before the climb can gain momentum, the weight of inner clutter must be addressed. Thoughts, beliefs, and emotions left unexamined accumulate like stones in a backpack, making each step heavier than it needs to be. This is why the first stage of inner transformation is purification, an intentional cleansing of thought and desire. The Psalm's call for clean hands and a pure heart is not just a poetic image. It is an exact description of what must happen for the soul to rise. Purification is not a single moment of dramatic change, but a steady process of unburdening the mind, layer by layer, until clarity and strength emerge. The deeper mind responds not to appearances, but to impressions. Every fearful thought impressed upon it leaves a trace. Over time, these traces shape expectations, and expectations quietly shape reality. To purify thought is to interrupt this unconscious cycle, to become deliberate about what is allowed to settle into the inner life. The process begins with awareness. Notice the constant flow of thoughts that pass through your mind each day. Many are remnants of old experiences. Some are voices you no longer agree with, but still hear. Becoming aware of them is not about judgment, but about reclaiming authorship. Without awareness, thoughts run unchecked, and life feels like a reflection of chaos rather than choice. Desire, too, must be examined. Not all desire is destructive, far from it. Pure desire is an expression of divine impulse, calling you toward your highest potential. Yet, desire mixed with fear, greed, or insecurity becomes distortion. Purifying desire means stripping away what is borrowed from comparison, envy, or cultural conditioning, and uncovering what is truly yours. This kind of self-honesty is not harsh, it is liberating. When motives become clear, energy once wasted on inner conflict is freed for growth. This purification process requires patience. The mind cannot be emptied in a single act of willpower. It is trained through repetition. Just as water smooths a stone over years, so conscious thought reshapes the inner life over time. Affirmations spoken with conviction, moments of intentional silence, and steady meditation work together to create a clean inner space. The psalm describes ascending a hill, not leaping to a summit. Every deliberate effort is a step upward, and each step matters. Practical tools make this process tangible. Begin by selecting a simple truth to dwell on daily, something that resonates deeply, like "I rest in divine order," or "Peace governs my mind." Repeat it gently, not with strain, but with calm authority. Let the words sink into the deeper mind until they feel natural. When stray thoughts of fear or doubt arise, do not battle them, simply return to the chosen truth. Over time, the subconscious begins to prefer this new pattern, and life reflects the change. Cleansing the heart involves a similar discipline. Many carry unhealed memories that quietly influence choices. Forgiveness becomes essential, not as an obligation to others, but as a gift to oneself. Forgiveness does not condone harm. It releases the hold that old experiences have over the mind. Each act of forgiveness is like setting down a stone from your backpack. Slowly, the climb becomes lighter. The air clears, and the spirit begins to sense freedom. Another powerful practice is watchfulness over speech. Words are carriers of belief. Every complaint, every careless criticism reinforces a pattern in the deeper mind. Speech purified through gratitude and truth reinforces new impressions, training the mind to expect good. This does not mean pretending problems do not exist. It means refusing to give them ultimate authority. Speaking truth with faith is part of the climb. There will be moments in this purification journey when resistance surfaces. Old habits may whisper that change is impossible. Fear may rise as old beliefs are challenged. This is part of the process. Resistance is evidence that deep patterns are being rewritten. Do not fear the discomfort. It is the sign that transformation is underway. Keep climbing. The Psalm's language of ascent teaches us that purification is not a retreat from life, but a preparation for it. As the inner life clears, decisions become simpler. Energy once spent on self-doubt becomes available for service, creativity, and love. The holy hill is not a distant temple. It is the consciousness that sees clearly, loves deeply, and acts with purpose. This journey also reshapes how challenges are perceived. When the mind is cluttered, obstacles seem overwhelming. But as purity develops, the same challenges become opportunities to affirm truth. Instead of reacting in fear, the purified heart responds with wisdom. Life does not necessarily become easier, but you become stronger. The climb itself becomes a training ground, sharpening your perception and fortifying your spirit. Silence plays a key role in this stage. Setting aside a few minutes each day for quiet reflection allows the mind to settle. In silence, hidden fears rise to the surface, giving you the opportunity to release them consciously. This is not passive. It is an active cleansing of the mental environment. Over time, silence becomes a sanctuary, a place where truth speaks louder than fear. The result of this steady purification is inner coherence. The divided mind begins to unite. Thoughts align with intentions, and actions align with values. Life feels less like a struggle and more like a flow. The Psalm's vision of standing in a holy place becomes a lived reality, not because the world has changed, but because you have. There is a sacred simplicity to this work. It does not demand perfection. It requires honesty, persistence, and trust in a divine order that is already present. Each day of practice is a day of ascent. The holy hill is not climbed in haste. It is climbed step by step through choices made in the quiet places of thought and feeling. Right now, let a moment of awareness settle. Consider what you have been carrying, old judgments, fears, or resentments that you no longer need. Picture setting them down, one by one, at the foot of this mountain. Feel the relief, however slight, and take one step upward in your mind. That is all this path asks, one conscious step at a time. The purification stage is not glamorous. It is quiet, humble, and often unseen by others. But within, a profound change is taking place. The deeper mind, once clouded, becomes receptive to divine truth. The heart, once heavy, becomes light. The hands, once hesitant, become instruments of purpose. This is where the climb truly begins, not with grand declarations, but with the steady work of clearing the way. Faith is not a fragile wish whispered into the dark, it is a force that shapes reality. On the climb of inner ascension, faith acts like the scaffolding of a great structure. It is invisible yet indispensable, a framework upon which your life is built. When Psalm 24 speaks of standing in a holy place, it implies stability and unshakable stance. That stability comes from faith, not as blind optimism, but as a deliberate trust in divine order. This trust is not passive, it is a creative power that transforms how the mind interprets every event and how the heart responds to every challenge. True faith is never mere intellectual assent. It is a deep conviction that rises from within, guiding thought, emotion, and action. The deeper mind responds to belief the way soil responds to seed. It gives form to whatever is planted. Faith, therefore, is not only spiritual, it is deeply practical. It influences the way we speak, the decisions we make, and the way opportunities unfold. Without it, we drift, reacting to life as if it were chaos. With it, we align with an unseen order that steadily reveals itself through outcomes. Consider the process of building a cathedral. Long before the structure reaches toward the sky, invisible foundations are laid. Workers dig deep, laying stones that no one will see, ensuring that what is built will not crumble. Faith is like that unseen foundation. Each affirmation of truth, each choice to trust rather than fear, is a stone placed in the soul's architecture. No one applauds these invisible acts of faith, but they hold up the entire structure of a life that stands firm in the face of storms. Faith becomes the bridge between what is hoped for and what is manifested. It is not merely believing that something might happen, it is a conscious alignment with the reality of divine presence already at work. This is why faith is inseparable from purification. A divided mind cannot hold faith because faith requires a unified focus. The psalmist's imagery of lifting gates and opening doors speaks to this inner act. Faith is the choice to open. It is the courage to let light in when fear whispers to shut everything out. The deeper mind, receptive by nature, needs clear instructions. Faith provides those instructions not through frantic effort, but through steady conviction. When the heart is filled with trust in divine wisdom, the subconscious begins to arrange circumstances in harmony with that trust. This is not magic, it is spiritual law. Just as seeds germinate when placed in fertile soil, ideas charged with faith grow into visible experiences. This principle gives weight to every thought we entertain and every belief we hold. Doubt, by contrast, scatters energy. It is like trying to build a bridge while simultaneously dismantling it. Many live in this state, alternating between bursts of faith and waves of fear. The climb becomes exhausting because energy is spent rebuilding the same ground. Faith resolves this cycle by choosing one narrative, the narrative of truth. It declares, "The earth is the Lord's," and rests in that declaration. It does not mean ignoring difficulty, but it does mean refusing to give fear authority over the mind. This understanding of faith reshapes prayer. Prayer is not about persuading a reluctant power to intervene, it is about aligning consciousness with what is already true. When you pray from faith, you pray with certainty. The words are not an attempt to convince, they are an expression of agreement with divine order. This kind of prayer carries authority because it comes from conviction. Over time, the heart grows accustomed to this certainty, and anxiety loses its grip. In this stage of spiritual ascent, faith becomes a discipline. It is exercised daily like a muscle through deliberate thought. Every affirmation, every meditation on truth strengthens it. This does not mean ignoring reality. It means interpreting reality through a higher lens. When fear presents itself, faith does not deny its existence. It simply refuses to bow to it. Faith is a steady gaze upward, even when the path is steep and the way unclear. There is power in simple, repeated declarations of truth. Saying, "I am guided by wisdom, I am upheld by love," may feel ordinary, but when repeated with feeling, it becomes an instruction impressed on the deeper mind. Over time, this quiet practice transforms character. It builds inner resilience, making it possible to stand firm when external circumstances shift. This is the architecture of spiritual life, unseen at first, yet strong enough to support great heights. Faith is the material of this architecture. Without it, the soul's house is fragile, swaying with every storm. With it, the soul becomes a fortress, not of isolation, but of strength. Psalm 24's imagery of standing in a holy place takes on a new meaning in this light. To stand there is not simply to arrive at a destination, it is to inhabit a state of consciousness built on trust. Notice how this changes the way we interact with others. Faith softens judgment because it sees beyond surface behavior to the deeper potential within every person. It strengthens patience because it trusts that growth unfolds according to a higher rhythm. Faith is not loud, but it is contagious. Others feel its steadiness and are drawn to its calm. In this way, faith is both deeply personal and profoundly communal. It uplifts not only the one who holds it, but all who come near. As the climb continues, faith becomes more than a practice. It becomes a natural way of being. At first, trust feels like a choice made against resistance. Over time, it becomes instinct. The gates of the mind open more easily, and divine presence is felt more readily. Fear, once dominant, loses its authority. The mountain path does not flatten, but the climber walks with new strength. In silence, take a moment to consider where faith could replace uncertainty in your life. Perhaps there is a situation that feels immovable, a burden that feels unshakable. Faith does not deny its existence, it redefines its meaning. It whispers that even this is part of the climb, even this can become a stepping stone. Let this thought settle in your mind like a seed in good soil. Trust that it will grow. Faith is the scaffolding of spiritual elevation. It supports every act of purification, every moment of prayer, and every choice of integrity. With faith, the climb becomes less about striving and more about trusting the upward pull of truth. This is the architecture of the soul, strong, steady, and capable of bearing the weight of glory. There comes a point on the climb where strength is not found in grasping harder, but in letting go. The path narrows, and attachments that once felt essential reveal themselves as weights. Spiritual ascension is not only about acquiring wisdom or practicing devotion. It is also about releasing the subtle chains of ego. The Psalms question, "Who may ascend?" carries with it the understanding that this journey requires an uncluttered spirit. The higher you rise, the less you can carry, and this becomes both a challenge and a gift. Renunciation is often misunderstood. Many imagine it as harsh self-denial, a rejection of life's joys. In truth, it is a conscious choice to set down illusions, to refuse to let false narratives define you. Renunciation is not poverty, it is freedom from being owned by what you own. It is not cold detachment, it is clear-sightedness. The ego thrives on proving itself, comparing itself, and clinging to temporary security. The soul seeks simplicity, not as an aesthetic, but as a path to power. When you let go of what does not align with your higher purpose, you make space for something greater to enter. This release extends beyond material attachments. It includes subtle inner identifications, the roles you cling to, the grievances you rehearse, the fears you secretly protect because they feel familiar. Each of these is a stone added to your pack. Renunciation is the quiet act of setting them down one by one. At first, it feels unsettling, as though part of your identity is being stripped away. But as the climb continues, lightness emerges, and the heart feels freer than before. Renewal is the natural counterpart of renunciation. Nature abhors a vacuum. The moment something is released, something higher is invited in. The Psalms' imagery of gates lifting and everlasting doors opening points directly to this exchange. As you release old stories and patterns, a new flow of life enters. Spiritual renewal is not a burst of emotional excitement. It is a steady infusion of vitality, clarity, and peace. The climber who has renounced is not empty but filled with strength. Think of a river carving its way through stone. It does not force the stone to move, it wears away resistance through persistence. The same is true of inner renewal. It is not an event but a process, as gentle and inevitable as water shaping a canyon. With each act of letting go, space is made for divine presence. With each act of surrender, the current of truth flows more freely. The climb, once exhausting, becomes less about exertion and more about allowing yourself to be carried upward by a greater rhythm. Humility plays a central role in this stage. Humility is not self-deprecation, it is clarity. It is the recognition that personal willpower alone cannot sustain spiritual elevation. Humility bows to the laws of life, acknowledging that strength comes from alignment, not control. In this posture, the ego loosens its grip and the soul begins to perceive reality without distortion. Humility is a form of renunciation, the letting go of pride, of the need to be right, of the compulsion to prove one's worth. It is a powerful state because it places you in direct cooperation with divine order. Service naturally follows humility. When the ego loosens, compassion rises. The purified heart, no longer weighed down by bitterness or competition, finds joy in giving. Service is not an obligation, but a reflection of inner abundance. It confirms that you are part of a greater whole, that your life is not isolated, but deeply woven into the lives of others. In serving, you reinforce the truth that spiritual ascent is not about escaping the world, but about transforming it. There is a rhythm to renunciation and renewal that becomes easier to recognize over time. At first, letting go feels like loss, but soon it reveals itself as liberation. Every attachment released makes room for a higher perception. The Psalms' vision of the holy hill becomes more than a metaphor. It becomes a state of consciousness where life feels lighter, even amidst external challenges. This is not because the climb has ended, but because you are no longer fighting against its demands. Consider taking a moment now to reflect. What are you carrying that no longer serves you? Perhaps it is a memory you revisit too often, a fear that governs your decisions, or a sense of identity built on past failures. The act of naming these weights is itself a form of renunciation. Once identified, you can choose to lay them down, not by force, but by releasing your grip on them. Renewal is then a natural response. The mind, once cluttered, becomes receptive to new insights. Inspiration rises more easily because there is space for it. This is why so many spiritual traditions emphasize simplicity. Simplicity is not deprivation, it is focus. It directs your attention toward what is eternal, allowing you to experience peace in a world that constantly pulls at your senses. The holy place described in the psalm is not a distant temple built with stone. It is the inner sanctuary revealed when distractions fall away. As you let go of attachments, you begin to see this sanctuary more clearly. It is not created by effort, it is uncovered by release. The climb itself becomes a revelation, showing that the summit was never about achieving something external, but about stripping away everything that obscured what was already within. This process of renewal also strengthens faith. Each time you release something you once depended on, and yet find yourself supported, trust deepens. You begin to see that your security does not come from possessions, status, or control, but from alignment with divine truth. This realization brings unshakable peace. In the quiet of this stage, pause and feel the difference between striving and surrender. Striving is tense, exhausting, and fragile. Surrender, when rooted in faith, feels like strength. It is the calm confidence that the mountain itself is not your enemy, but your ally, that every step upward is supported by an unseen presence. You are not climbing alone, you are being lifted. Renunciation and renewal are inseparable. One creates space, the other fills it with light. Together they form a rhythm that carries you upward, steady and sure. The holy gates of consciousness open wider with each act of letting go, and the King of Glory enters, not as an external figure, but as the living presence of truth within. The climb no longer feels like an endless struggle. It becomes a sacred unveiling of the strength that has always been there. There is a moment in every spiritual ascent when perception shifts entirely. What once seemed like a distant summit becomes a state of awareness that permeates everything. This is the crown of the journey, not a physical crown to wear, but a clarity of vision that transforms how life is seen and experienced. The Psalm's imagery of the holy hill, the lifted gates, and the open doors all point toward this awakening of consciousness. To ascend is not only to rise above fear and confusion, it is to dwell in a place where truth is constant, where the presence of the divine becomes unmistakable. Awareness is often misunderstood as mere observation. True awareness is participation in reality at a deeper level. It is not standing back and analyzing life from a distance. It is stepping fully into the rhythm of divine order and seeing through its lens. This awareness feels like illumination, but it is not dramatic or theatrical. It is quiet, steady, and deeply liberating. When the psalm declares, "Lift up your heads, O ye gates," it describes this very act. Consciousness, lifting itself to see beyond appearances, opening to a wisdom that has always been present but often ignored. This illumination does not separate you from the world. It connects you more deeply to it. Once the mind has been purified and faith established, awareness becomes expansive. You begin to notice subtle patterns, how fear disguises itself, how love heals silently, how opportunities emerge as if by design. Life no longer feels random, and even challenges carry meaning. The psalm speaks of the King of Glory entering through the lifted gates. This imagery symbolizes the inflow of divine power into consciousness. When awareness reaches this level, you no longer see yourself as a mere observer of life, but as a conscious participant in a larger reality. The crown of awareness is not achieved through strain. It emerges naturally as the byproduct of inner work, purification, faith, humility, and surrender. Just as a mountaintop view is not created but revealed when the climb is completed, so awareness is the unveiling of truth that has always existed. This unveiling is often accompanied by a sense of peace that does not depend on external conditions. The world may remain unpredictable, but the soul no longer wavers. This inner steadiness is a sign that you are beginning to dwell in what the psalm calls the holy place. At this level, thought itself changes texture. It becomes less scattered, more deliberate. The inner voice that once criticized or doubted now speaks with authority, reminding you of your connection to the source of all life. This is not self-hypnosis or forced positivity. It is alignment. Truth, once held by faith alone, begins to feel self-evident. The gates of consciousness remain open, allowing divine wisdom to guide decisions, actions, and relationships. This state of awareness has profound effects on how you engage with others. Compassion deepens, not because you choose to feel it, but because it flows naturally. The more clearly you see your own connection to the divine, the more you recognize that same connection in others. This does not mean overlooking harmful behavior or pretending everything is perfect. It means seeing through surface appearances to the deeper reality of every soul. From this perspective, judgment gives way to understanding, and fear gives way to patience. Awareness also reveals the power of presence. The mind no longer clings to the past or rushes anxiously toward the future. It finds strength in the now, the eternal moment where divine life is most clearly felt. The Psalm's triumphant language reflects this state: gates lifted high, doors open wide, and glory filling the space. In practical terms, this means the heart becomes a sanctuary, a place of stillness in the midst of a chaotic world. This presence is not withdrawal, it is engagement without entanglement, strength without strain. A practical way to cultivate this awareness is through consistent mindfulness of thought. The mind tends to wander, replaying fears or anticipating problems. Gently bringing attention back to truth is an act of lifting the gates. This is not about suppressing thoughts, but about replacing them with higher realities. Even simple affirmations, spoken with sincerity, act as reminders that truth is present now. Awareness grows as the mind learns to stay anchored in these reminders. Over time, they become natural, and awareness deepens without effort. Another powerful practice is gratitude. Gratitude turns the heart toward what is real rather than what is lacking. Each moment of sincere gratitude opens a door to divine presence. It is a quiet declaration that even in uncertainty, goodness is here. Gratitude shifts perception, revealing blessings that might otherwise go unnoticed. This shift is not sentimental, it is transformative. It allows the climber to see the mountain path not as a burden, but as a privilege, a sacred opportunity to rise. As awareness expands, life begins to feel more spacious. Problems do not disappear, but they no longer dominate your vision. You see them from above with perspective. Decisions become clearer because intuition speaks more loudly than fear. The crown of awareness is not a mystical trance, It is a grounded clarity that allows you to navigate life with strength and grace. This is the state where spiritual principles stop being theory and become lived reality. This stage of ascent also marks a turning point. Once awareness reaches this level, the climb feels less like an effort to reach a destination and more like a revelation of what has always been true. The holy hill is not a far-off place, but a condition of consciousness. The gates were never locked, they were only closed by forgetfulness. Awakening is remembering who you are and the divine life that animates every breath. Take a moment now to feel this truth, not as an idea, but as a present reality. The same intelligence that designed the stars and moves the tides sustains you. This is not theory, it is the essence of your being. Awareness is the unveiling of this fact, and once seen, it cannot be unseen. The Psalm's triumphant tone reflects this certainty. The King of Glory has entered, not from outside but from within, filling the temple of your mind with light. At this stage, the climber becomes steady. The view from the summit is not just a reward, it is a responsibility. With clarity comes the call to live differently, to speak truth with kindness, to act with purpose, and to serve from abundance. Awareness is not an escape, it is empowerment. It equips you to live in a way that reflects the reality you have discovered. The holy hill is a perspective you carry, a constant reminder that divine presence is not a distant dream, but an immediate experience. The psalm crescendos with a call that reverberates through time. Lift up your heads, O ye gates, and be ye lifted up, ye everlasting doors, and the King of Glory shall come in. This is not simply ancient poetry, it is a mystical proclamation. The gates are your own consciousness, the doors your inner receptivity. The King of Glory represents divine power and wisdom entering awareness. This moment in the climb is not about striving upward anymore, it is about opening fully. It is the point where the seeker realizes that spiritual ascent is not a lonely quest, but a partnership with the presence that has been guiding every step. At this stage, the imagery of the mountain transforms. The climb that once felt arduous reveals itself as an unveiling. The mountain was not an obstacle, it was a symbol of depth, inviting you inward. The gates you lift are not barriers, they are thresholds you choose to open. This shift marks the difference between spiritual effort and spiritual flow. The climber ceases to feel like an orphan scaling impossible heights and begins to feel like a child returning home. The divine life that once seemed distant now feels closer than breath, as if the entire journey has been a process of remembering what was never lost. When the psalm asks, "Who is this King of Glory?" it invites reflection on what divine power truly means. It is not domination, not a force that crushes or coerces. It is a presence that brings order, love, and truth. It is creative intelligence in action, lifting everything it touches. This realization reshapes how you see power in every form. Spiritual power is not about control, it is about alignment. The more the gates of the mind open, the more life is infused with this quiet authority that does not shout, but transforms. The process of opening these gates is not a mystical ritual reserved for a select few. It is a deliberate act of receptivity available to anyone willing to practice it. Every time you choose trust over fear, you lift the gates a little higher. Every time you allow forgiveness to replace bitterness, a door opens wider. These choices create space for the flow of divine life, not because you are earning it, but because you are no longer resisting it. The King of Glory enters naturally, like sunlight filling a room once the curtains are drawn. This is the essence of spiritual awakening. The divine has always been present, but a closed mind cannot perceive it. The climb has been preparing you for this moment, not to reach something external, but to recognize the reality already within. This awareness changes everything. Fear loses its grip because fear thrives in separation. The moment you experience union with divine life, even briefly, fear becomes an echo rather than a master. It is here that spiritual maturity begins. The path was never meant to end at personal enlightenment alone. The awakening of the individual is also a call to action. As the gates open, a sense of responsibility arises, not as a burden, but as a privilege. Having experienced the inflow of divine wisdom, you become a channel for it. Your presence itself becomes a message of hope and stability. The King of Glory entering your consciousness means that your life is no longer yours alone. It belongs to the greater whole. This is why humility is essential in this stage. Without humility, the experience of divine power could be mistaken for personal achievement. But true spiritual elevation always brings greater reverence. The more light you carry, the more you see that you are not the source of it. You are a vessel, a gate, a door through which truth enters the world. This is not a lowering of your worth, but an expansion of it. To serve as a channel for divine life is the highest honor. Take a moment to reflect on what it means for divine power to enter. It is not about a dramatic mystical event, though moments of awe may accompany it. It is about transformation. The King of Glory entering means wisdom begins to govern decisions, peace steadies emotions, and love motivates action. It is a gradual, steady permeation of every aspect of life. The more open the gates, the more this presence flows, shaping relationships, work, and even your perception of self. This stage of the climb also reveals a new kind of strength. Earlier in the journey, spiritual growth felt like effort, discipline, purification, intentional thought. Now the strength comes from surrender. The climber realizes that the mountain itself is alive with divine support, that gravity itself seems to reverse, pulling you upward rather than down. Spiritual elevation becomes less about climbing toward God and more about allowing God to rise within you. In this state, prayer changes tone. It becomes less about asking and more about listening. It becomes less about pleading and more about welcoming. Prayer becomes a space of receptivity, where wisdom flows naturally. This is why the Psalms' call to lift the gates is so powerful. It captures the essence of prayer as opening. The King of Glory does not force entry. He is invited. And when invited, the atmosphere of life changes, quietly but unmistakably. This awareness reshapes the way you see challenges. They are no longer proof of failure, but opportunities to widen the gates. Fear no longer feels like an enemy to fight, but a signpost pointing to where trust is needed most. Every difficulty becomes an invitation to allow divine power to enter more fully. This does not minimize suffering, but it reframes it, transforming pain into a place of encounter with truth. The summit of the holy hill is not a location, but a consciousness in which this presence is felt continuously. It is a way of being in the world while staying connected to something higher. This is why saints, sages, and mystics throughout history often radiate peace even in the face of turmoil. They are not immune to life's storms. They are anchored in a reality deeper than the storm. The King of Glory has entered, and that changes everything. This is the ultimate purpose of spiritual ascension, not to escape the world, but to live in it as a reflection of divine life. The gates of your mind, once guarded by fear, become open channels of wisdom and love. The climb has revealed that the holy place is within, and the glory you sought has always been at the center of your being. Now every breath becomes an act of worship, every word an opportunity to speak truth, every choice a chance to demonstrate the presence of God. Pause here, at this moment of realization. Feel the strength of the presence within. This is not a fleeting inspiration, it is the essence of who you are. The King of Glory is not coming to visit and leave. He abides. The gates you lifted cannot close again easily because your awareness has expanded beyond its old limits. The climb continues, but now it is marked by peace, not striving, by gratitude, not fear. You have reached the summit not by conquest but by surrender, and that surrender has revealed a power greater than anything you could have imagined. The path of inner ascension does not end at the summit, it transforms into a way of living. The holy hill is not a destination to visit, but a state to embody. Once the gates of consciousness have been lifted and divine presence has entered, the climb becomes an ongoing rhythm, a daily alignment with truth. The Psalm's triumphant tone shifts, not because its power fades, but because it becomes integrated into the ordinary flow of life. The sacred and the practical merge, and spiritual elevation is expressed in simple, consistent actions. Living the ascent means carrying the clarity of the summit into every moment. The peace found in stillness must accompany you into conversation. The strength discovered in prayer must shape your choices under pressure. This is where the spiritual journey proves itself authentic, not in temporary inspiration, but in transformation that endures. The words of the psalm become less a passage you read and more a mirror of who you have become, a soul with clean hands, a pure heart, and a life that reflects divine order. Daily practice is essential to sustaining this state. Begin each morning by centering your mind in truth, even before the noise of the world reaches you. A single verse, a brief affirmation, or a moment of silence can reset your focus, reminding you of your place on the holy hill. Over time, this ritual becomes more than a habit. It becomes a source of strength. Spiritual clarity is not maintained by accident, but by intention. Evening reflection is equally powerful. As you close the day, review its events without judgment. Notice where you acted from faith and where fear tried to take over. Offer gratitude for every opportunity to grow. This practice reinforces awareness, keeping your gates open even while you rest. Life itself becomes prayer, a dialogue between your inner self and the divine. Meditation and affirmation continue to play a central role. These practices are not occasional exercises, but the steady oxygen of spiritual life. Meditation creates space for renewal, clearing the mind so it remains receptive. Affirmations impress truth upon the deeper mind, strengthening your foundation. Together they ensure that the holy hill is not a place you climb once, but a state you return to daily. Living the ascent also means walking in humility. Awakening is not a reason for pride, it is a call to serve. True spiritual power always flows outward, blessing others through presence and action. Compassion deepens as awareness grows. When you see others struggling, you recognize reflections of your own past climb. This empathy empowers you to speak words that heal, to act with patience, and to offer encouragement without judgment. The summit was not reached for your sake alone. It equips you to be a channel of peace in a restless world. Challenges will still come, but they no longer shake you in the same way. The perspective of the summit remains, allowing you to see trials as opportunities for deeper trust. The Psalm's vision of the King of Glory entering is not a one-time event. It is a continuous flow. Each new difficulty becomes another gate to lift, another chance to invite divine wisdom into your circumstances. This shift in perception turns even adversity into a stepping stone. Relationships also transform through this daily practice of ascent. The more you live from your inner sanctuary, the more you see the light in others. Conversations gain depth, not because you force them to, but because your presence carries peace. People sense stability in you because it is real. This stability does not mean you are unaffected by life's chaos. It means you are anchored in something unshakable. In this way, your life becomes a testimony to the Psalm's message without a word being spoken. Spiritual elevation also reshapes how you approach goals and ambitions. The drive to prove yourself begins to fade, replaced by a desire to serve and create from alignment. Success becomes less about competition and more about contribution. You recognize that your life is part of a greater design, and this awareness brings a quiet confidence. You no longer grasp at control because you trust the order guiding your steps. This daily living of ascension requires discernment. The world is loud, filled with distractions that pull attention away from truth. But each moment of stillness, each conscious breath reminds you that you carry the summit within. You do not need to withdraw completely to maintain clarity. You only need to stay connected. This connection is built through daily choices, choosing peace over reaction, gratitude over complaint, and trust over fear. The journey we have walked through Psalm 24 is a lifelong invitation. It began with a call to ascend, a challenge to purify the heart and act with integrity. It led through faith, humility, and surrender, and revealed the reality of divine power dwelling within. Now the task is to live from this awareness. The holy hill is not a far-off place. It is wherever you stand when you stand in truth. Pause and let this realization settle. Everything you have sought is already here. The climb was never about reaching God, but about uncovering the presence of God that has been with you from the beginning. The earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof means every step, every breath, every moment is already sacred. Living the ascent is simply choosing to see it that way. Let each day become an extension of this truth. As you move through ordinary tasks, carry the awareness that you are standing on holy ground. Approach conversations with reverence, decisions with wisdom, and challenges with courage. The presence you carry will speak louder than any words. This is what it means to live as one who has ascended, to be a gate through which divine love and wisdom flow into the world. The spiritual path is not a series of isolated moments of inspiration, but a steady transformation of perception. It is the choice to keep the gates lifted, to let light in every day, and to reflect that light wherever you go. In this way, Psalm 24 ceases to be only a song of ancient faith. It becomes your story, your prayer, your life. The King of Glory has entered, and nothing can remain the same. The mountain you sensed at the beginning of this journey is no longer distant. It has revealed itself to be within you, rising from your own heart. And now, as you live this truth, you carry the summit with you everywhere you go. Now the climb is complete, and yet it continues. The holy hill you sought was never a distant summit, never a mystery locked away in some unreachable heaven. It was always here, rising within you, waiting for your consent to be revealed. Psalm 24 has been your guide, not as an ancient relic, but as a living map of the soul. Its challenge was clear: who may ascend? And now you know the answer: the one who chooses purity of thought, integrity of action, and a heart open to the flow of divine presence. As you stand in this awareness, feel the solidity beneath you, as if your life is now rooted on unshakable ground. Strength is not found in control but in surrender, not in striving but in alignment. Each step revealed a step, cleansing the mind, practicing trust, releasing what weighed you down, and opening to the presence with you all along. You have not climbed alone. Every prayer, every forgiveness, every quiet affirmation was a signal to heaven, and heaven answered by revealing itself within. Now, take this peace into your days. Let the summit shape your mornings, your conversations, your decisions. Carry the simplicity of truth into moments that once felt overwhelming. The world may still be loud, but within you there is a sanctuary, a place of stillness, wisdom, and power. This is ascension, not escape from life, but deeper engagement with it. You are not only a climber, you are a gate, a living temple through which divine glory moves. So rest here for a while. Breathe in the quiet strength that fills you. The holy hill is no longer a destination, it is the ground of your being. Carry it with you and let its truth guide every step forward. You have ascended, and this ascent is infinite, a daily invitation to rise again, to open wider, and to live from the summit that has always been your true home.